Enochian magic is a system of ceremonial practice that emerged in the late 16th century through the work of the Elizabethan scholar John Dee and his associate Edward Kelly. Despite the variety of interpretations it has inspired, Enochian magic remains centered on angelic communications, intricate language systems, and elaborate magical tables and calls. John Dee was a respected mathematician, astronomer, and advisor to Queen Elizabeth I, reputed for his expansive knowledge of natural philosophy and esotericism. However, beginning in 1582, Dee turned his attention toward more spiritual matters, seeking direct communication with angelic beings. He believed that by conversing with angels, mankind might regain lost wisdom from a time before the biblical fall of Adam. This is a time when human understanding of divine knowledge had supposedly been complete, at the expense of worldly knowledge. This pursuit led him to collaborate with Edward Kelly, a man of uncertain background, but one who claimed the rare ability to communicate with angels through a crystal ball. From 1582 to around 1589, Dee and Kelly conducted numerous scrying sessions. Dee would record the dialogues in detailed diaries, while Kelly served as the medium through whom the angels spoke. Over time, the entities they communicated with revealed an intricate language, now known as the Enochian or angelical language, that was said to predate human speech. This was purportedly the language spoken by angels, and also the direct language of God himself, at least when communicating with these beings. The angels also delivered a complex cosmology, including instructions for constructing magical tables and using special calls, or keys, to access different spiritual realms. The name Enochian derives from the biblical figure Enoch, a patriarch who is said to have walked with God and who appears in various apocryphal texts associated with hidden wisdom. In some interpretations, Dee and Kelly's angelic communications were considered a recovery of the knowledge Enoch once possessed. The language revealed to Dee and Kelly is one of the most distinctive aspects of Enochian magic. The angelic, or Enochian language, is composed of a unique alphabet, vocabulary, and grammar, purportedly given directly by angelic beings. Dee meticulously recorded these messages in his diaries, sometimes including complex encryption and tabular systems. In practice, Enochian magic makes extensive use of these calls, which are lengthy invocations composed in the angelic language. These keys are believed to open the doors to various angelic realms, granting the magician access to spiritual insights and potentially supernatural powers. The magical system is arranged around the Great Table or tablets, 4 elemental tables: air, water, earth, and fire, each subdivided into numerous squares containing letters. By employing these calls in conjunction with the tablets, the magician aims to interact with hierarchies of angels associated with particular elements, directions, and cosmological layers. Over time, these complex correspondences and linguistic structures have led to a wide range of interpretations and practical approaches. Some practitioners see Enochian magic as a system intended to elevate the practitioner's spiritual consciousness, while others regard it as a method of obtaining hidden knowledge. It's important to note that Dee and Kelly's recorded materials can be difficult to parse. Scholars often debate the authenticity and coherence of the Enochian system. Some argue that Kelly may have fabricated or channeled these communications from his subconscious. Others maintain that Dee and Kelly's angelic dialogues contain genuine visionary material that should be understood within the context of early modern Christian mysticism. Notably, Dee himself never seems to have used the system in a fully developed magical practice. Instead, he mainly recorded and preserved the information, leaving subsequent generations to interpret and implement it as a workable system of magic. Further, Dee and Kelly had a falling out after the angel Uriel told Kelly that Dee ought to share his wife with Kelly. He apparently did so, but this use or abuse of the system apparently soured John Dee on future workings with Edward Kelly. Oh, also Kelly may have knocked up Dee's wife. Maury wasn't around in the 16th century, so I guess we'll never get the big paternity reveal, though. Interest in Enochian magic lay dormant for centuries, until the late 19th century, when the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn rediscovered Dee's manuscripts. In the Golden Dawn's formulation, the Enochian system became more accessible to modern magicians. They restructured the elemental tablets, refined the pronunciation and interpretation of the calls, and integrated Enochian magic into a progressive curriculum of spiritual development. Aleister Crowley was also deeply influenced by Enochian magic. Crowley studied Dee's diaries and incorporated Enochian elements into his own magical workings, often blending them with Thelemic principles. Haitian Voodoo is a syncretic religion that emerged in Haiti during the colonial era and has its roots in various West and Central African spiritual traditions. Over time, it blended with elements of Roman Catholicism, introduced by the French colonial presence, resulting in a complex religious and esoteric system. The historical origins of voodoo can be traced back to the 17th and 18th centuries, when the island of Hispaniola was a French colony named Saint-Domingue. Africans, primarily from regions corresponding to modern-day Benin, Togo, Nigeria, and the Congo area, brought with them distinct spiritual practices and cosmologies. These traditions, known as Vodun, carried a pantheon of spirits, ancestral reverence, and an understanding of the divine infused in everyday life. This syncretic blending was facilitated by a shared spiritual logic. The African deities, known as Loa in Haitian Voodoo, were likened to Catholic saints. The Africans often took advantage of the Catholic practice of venerating saints, depicted in statues and images, to represent their own African spirits, thereby preserving their traditions. This identification wasn't just a pragmatic necessity to keep traditions alive. It reflected a mutual understanding that divine forces manifest in numerous ways. The people understood certain saints to be manifestations of the gods they had previously worshipped, based on overlapping powers and abilities associated with them. Haitian voodoo ceremonies often involve singing, drumming, spirit possession, and offerings to the spirits who act as intermediaries between humans and the Supreme Creator. Participants might dance and sing in rhythmic patterns, facilitating a trance state that allows spirits to possess an individual, temporarily speaking through them to offer guidance. One prominent magical practice in Haitian voodoo is the preparation of gris-gris, small amulets or pouches filled with herbs, powders, and charged with spiritual energy. These objects are believed to offer protection, attract love, or bring luck. Another key practice is spiritual baths, which cleanse negative energies and restore balance, often involving sacred water, herbs, and prayers. However, there's a darker side of voodoo practice, and priests called bokor can be hired to curse enemies or create potions with disturbing effects. Perhaps most famously, these bokor can be hired to create zombies, which I'll be discussing later in this video. Notably, while voodoo dolls are often associated with Haitian voodoo in popular culture, they don't figure prominently in Haitian practice. Instead, the prevalence of voodoo dolls comes from Louisiana voodoo, which, while similar to the Haitian variant, definitely needs to be explored in its own entry in this series. Hey everyone, it's Jimmy here, just reminding you to like and subscribe and to hit the notification bell. Now let's get back to business. Skinwalkers are figures rooted in traditional Navajo beliefs, regarded as malevolent practitioners of witchcraft who can assume the form of animals. They derive from the Navajo word commonly translated as "with it" he goes on all fours. Such individuals are not ordinary community members, but are considered corrupt witches who have chosen to forsake the established paths of healing and spirituality. Instead of using their abilities for beneficial purposes, they employ them to harm others, spread fear, and disrupt communal harmony. The history of skinwalker lore can be traced through generations of Navajo oral tradition, passed down long before the arrival of Europeans. While the Navajo have no written language historically, their stories, ceremonial practices, and historical memories have been meticulously preserved through narration. Anthropologists studying Navajo culture, beginning during the late 19th and early 20th centuries, learned that skinwalker beliefs were long-standing and intricately woven into local cosmologies. Though these researchers were often met with reluctance because discussing skinwalkers is taboo among the Navajo, they confirmed that the concept preceded any modern influences. Early fieldwork by such scholars documented the taboo status of these stories, noting that Navajo people would seldom mention them openly for fear of retribution or misfortune. In traditional Navajo cosmology, the realm of the spiritual is not separate from everyday life. Shamans and medicine men devote themselves to healing ceremonies, complex chants, and the maintenance of communal and individual well-being. Their role is to restore balance and harmony and ensure the orderly functioning of the world. However, those who become skinwalkers deliberately invert this role. They receive training similar to that of medicine men, but then misuse this sacred knowledge for dark purposes. This transition typically involves breaking severe cultural taboos, such as slaying a close relative, an act believed to poison the practitioner's spiritual core and grant twisted powers. Accounts collected by anthropologists and historians indicate that skinwalkers are said to target individuals for reasons both personal and arbitrary. They are blamed for unexplained illnesses, sudden deaths, the loss of livestock, and psychological distress. In many traditional Navajo communities, people employ protective measures against them, such as using certain herbs and spices and seeking the assistance of knowledgeable healers. Contemporary Navajo often avoid public discussions of skinwalkers, since even uttering their names is thought to attract unwanted attention. Basically, since skinwalkers are so arbitrary and destructive, the safest bet is to simply keep your head down and hope you don't draw any attention. There are historical references to skinwalker beliefs in the notes of early traders, missionaries, and government officials who interacted with the Navajo. Although these outsiders often misunderstood the cultural context, their writings provide glimpses into how pervasive the fear and belief were. For instance, certain late 19th century U.S. military records hint that Navajo scouts and interpreters were unwilling to go to places associated with what were then called witches. In terms of historical practice, there is no record of organized skinwalker cults or coven-type groups. However, there have been whispered suggestions that certain groups of skinwalkers met in secluded spots to exchange their knowledge. Such gatherings, if they ever occurred, remain largely speculative. In recent years, skinwalkers have gained immense popularity beyond their traditional Navajo cultural context. Once rarely spoken about, these entities have emerged as a familiar trope in pop culture, online, and in horror media. The ancient Druids have long held a place in popular imagination, often depicted as mysterious and wise natural priests and magicians conducting rituals in forests or megaliths. Over the centuries, Druids have been romanticized and reimagined, and today there are groups who consciously identify as modern Druids, drawing inspiration from ancient Celtic spirituality. The ancient Druids flourished in Celtic cultures primarily between approximately 300 BC and the Roman conquest of Gaul and Britain in the 1st centuries BC and AD respectively. The word druid likely derives from a combination of Proto-Celtic terms, suggesting an association with oak trees and wisdom. Oak trees held symbolic importance and were closely associated with the natural world that Druids revered. The Druids were active in regions spanning parts of modern-day Ireland, Britain, and continental Europe, wherever Celtic tribes settled. Though their influence varied over time and geography, Druids appear to have shared certain broad similarities. They acted as intermediaries between people and the divine. They held responsibilities in passing on tribal and natural lore and delivering legal judgments, and guided magical nature rituals. One of the main challenges in studying historical Druids lies in the limited primary sources available. The Celts, including the Druids, passed down their traditions orally and didn't maintain their own written records. Much of what we know comes from descriptions by Greek and Roman authors, including Julius Caesar, who wrote about the Druids in his commentaries on the Gallic War. Caesar described them as a class of priests who oversaw religious ceremonies, served as judges in disputes, educated the youth, and wielded considerable political influence. The Druids' religious practices focused on maintaining harmony with nature and the spiritual realm, often involving sacred groves, which were forest clearings considered holy places. Trees, especially oaks and mistletoe, featured prominently in their rituals. While popular culture frequently associates Druids with Stonehenge, historical Druids didn't play a role in the construction of this Neolithic monument, which was built millennia before Druids existed. That said, it's open to interpretation whether the Druids used Stonehenge as a holy site, but most modern scholars think these are modern inventions. Modern Druidry, sometimes called Druidism, has taken root as a nature-based spiritual path embraced by people worldwide. Many modern Druids are motivated by environmental concerns, a desire to reconnect with the natural world, and an interest in Celtic mythology and spirituality. Modern Druid rituals often revolve around the seasonal festivals associated with Celtic traditions, such as Samhain, as well as the solstices and equinoxes. These ceremonies frequently take place outdoors, in forests, near ancient sites, or beside rivers and springs, reflecting a central tenet of Druid spirituality, reverence for the earth. Black magic, often understood as the use of supernatural powers for malevolent or selfish purposes, has a long and complex history that spans cultures and continents. People have practiced rituals and spells intended to harm enemies, bring misfortune, or manipulate circumstances for personal gain for millennia. While the concept itself may vary according to region and era, black magic is generally contrasted with white magic, which is deemed benevolent or healing. Throughout history, black magic has been intertwined with religion, folklore, cultural beliefs, and even political struggles, leading to social upheaval, persecution, and widespread misunderstandings that persist to this day. From the earliest civilizations to the modern age, it's never been a static phenomenon, and the nuances surrounding it are as abundant as the number of cultures that have defined it differently. The roots of black magic stretch back to antiquity, where the line between what we'd now consider religious practice and magical rites was often blurred. In the ancient Near East and Egypt, magic wasn't typically separated into categories of good and evil in the same way it is today. Nevertheless, certain incantations or rituals aimed at harming adversaries or influencing powerful rulers were whispered about and feared. One common early use of black magic in Egypt were ritual objects or texts inscribed with the names of enemies. They were often written on pottery or figurines, which were then smashed or buried to symbolically destroy the target. In Greece and Rome, magical papyri and curse tablets, small lead tablets inscribed with harmful intentions, were used against enemies, competitors, or unfaithful lovers. Such practices, while not always singled out as black magic, were widely recognized as manipulative and dangerous, despite being widely practiced. As Christianity spread through the late Roman Empire and throughout medieval Europe, the notion of what constituted harmful magic became more explicit. In the Christian worldview, any practice of magic that didn't rely on divine grace was suspicious, and the use of demonic forces to achieve earthly ends was mostly categorically condemned. Notably, there were exceptions, with the understanding that very powerful magicians of the past, such as King Solomon, could bind demons in a holy rather than unholy way. By the Middle Ages, black magic in Europe was generally understood to be any form of sorcery that relied upon calling on the devil or malevolent spirits, regardless of intent. Church authorities launched campaigns to stamp out unholy practices, and the line between what we'd now call folklore, healing practices, and black magic became increasingly blurred. Many herbalists, wise men and wise women, folk healers, and more were cast under suspicion if their activities didn't align with Christian orthodoxy. The tension grew, culminating in the early modern period, when witchcraft hysteria gripped Europe. While Europe's witchcraft hysteria eventually waned with the Enlightenment, interest in the occult didn't disappear. By the 19th century, secret societies, spiritualist movements, and occult revivals in Western Europe and the United States brought renewed attention to esoteric traditions. Some groups and individuals flirted with what they called the left-hand path, a term frequently associated with more transgressive, and thus more black, forms of magic. Notable figures like Crowley explored ceremonial magic that, while not necessarily black magic in the medieval sense, was portrayed as taboo, subversive, and sometimes dangerous. In non-Western cultures, the understanding of black magic has also been varied. Across parts of Africa, the Caribbean, South Asia, and Southeast Asia, certain ritualistic practices have long been labeled as black magic by outsiders. For example, as we discussed earlier, Haitian voodoo ritual practices have been widely understood to be all black magic all the time. However, many forms of Haitian voodoo do encompass forms of white magic related to health and good fortune. It's also worth noting that modern Western occult traditions sometimes reclaim terms like black magic to signify nonconformity, personal freedom, or spiritual exploration. For instance, some modern occultists argue that black magic represents a willingness to engage with darker aspects of human experience. They claim that practicing black magic challenges oppressive religious or cultural frameworks. Generally, though not always, these practitioners don't necessarily seek to harm others. Rather, they use the term black magic as a statement of separation from conventional morality. Zombies have become familiar figures in popular culture, often seen lumbering across movie screens or shambling through the pages of horror novels. Yet, behind the fictional ghouls that dominate modern media lies a disturbing tradition, one originating in the occult practices of Haitian voodoo. The word zombie is widely believed to derive from West African terms such as Nzambi or Zumbi, which refer to spirits or the souls of the dead. Within Haitian voodoo cosmology, the spirit world exists in constant interaction with the living, and the soul can be subject to manipulation by powerful ritualists known as bokors. The traditional Haitian zombie is not a flesh-eating ghoul, but rather a reanimated corpse or living person whose soul or willpower has been stolen. Haitian folklore describes bokors as having the knowledge to poison individuals, induce a death-like state, and then later revive them as mindless servants. According to these narratives, the victim's sense of self is destroyed, leaving them vulnerable to the bokor's commands. The Haitian Penal Code has historically included statutes outlawing zombification, treating it as a capital offense. This, of course, was direct legal recognition that someone could be zombified, stripped of their will, and made to appear dead. One of the most significant investigations was conducted by Wade Davis, an ethnobotanist who traveled to Haiti in the 1980s. Davis aimed to identify compounds that Bokors allegedly used to transform the living into zombies. He proposed that a combination of tetrodotoxin, a potent neurotoxin found in pufferfish, and other locally sourced chemicals could induce a death-like coma. This would slow bodily functions to the point where a victim might be presumed dead and later retrieved and revived by the Bokor. According to Davis, once the victim regained consciousness, their psychological trauma and cultural conditioning could lead them to behave like a docile servant. Davis's research was met with some skepticism. Critics argued that his chemical analyses were inconclusive and that cultural or psychological factors may play a larger role. However, it remains one of the most comprehensive attempts to verify the scientific legitimacy of Haitian zombification. Indeed, there are documented cases that lend credibility to at least some of Davis's claims. Take, for instance, the story of Clervius Narcisse, a Haitian man who allegedly died in 1962, was buried, and later reappeared in 1980. Narcisse claimed he had been resurrected as a zombie and forced to work on a plantation, only to escape later when the Bokor controlling him died. This bizarre tale sparked scientific curiosity and public fascination, prompting Davis's investigations. While no conclusive proof emerged that Narcisse truly died and was resurrected, medical records did show that he was pronounced dead and buried. Records also showed that he had been placed in a morgue for over a day before being buried. His reappearance suggested that either he had been misdiagnosed and buried alive, or that something even more extraordinary and sinister had taken place. Others have suggested the person who reappeared in 1962 wasn't actually Clervius Narcisse, but an individual who stole the identity of a dead man to profit off a zombie narrative. In more recent times, global popular culture has embraced the zombie, detaching it almost entirely from its Haitian roots. The modern zombie owes its popularity largely to George Romero's film Night of the Living Dead and its successors, which reimagined zombies as undead hordes. These zombies, too, are often removed from their occult context, instead providing a science fiction-based theme for why people turned into zombies. So like many of you, I'm a fan of zombies, having consumed probably thousands of hours of zombie-based content over the course of my life. From an occult perspective, zombies are endlessly fascinating because they embody the interplay between life, death, and the unknown forces that govern our existence. The idea that the soul or essence of a person could have partially or wholly departed while the body remains animated is both deeply disturbing and fascinating. To me, zombies, at least in their original context, are a potent representation of control and autonomy. In Haitian voodoo lore, the creation of a zombie is tied to the idea of spiritual entrapment. The Bokors, who manipulate individuals into a zombified state, highlight the dark potential of spiritual knowledge when used irresponsibly. They represent the ultimate loss of self, a soulless existence driven by the will of another. As someone intrigued by the occult, I find this theme particularly compelling because it forces us to question what makes us human. Zombies broke out of their original context in Haitian voodoo and into science fiction and pop culture due to their profound symbolic flexibility. In modern narratives, they embody fears of societal collapse, black swan events, and the loss of individuality, resonating with a global audience. The zombie archetype adapts seamlessly to different genres, representing everything from biological experimentation gone wrong to apocalyptic survival scenarios to evil rituals. Anyway, let me know in the comments if you'd like to see a deep dive video on zombies, since I'm endlessly fascinated by them and clearly want to rant about them. Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa's 3 books of occult philosophy stands as a cornerstone in Western esoteric literature. Published in 1533, this comprehensive work delves into the realms of natural magic, astrology, and divine mysteries, reflecting the Renaissance obsession with both science and mysticism. Agrippa, a German polymath born in 1486, was deeply immersed in the intellectual currents of his time. His engagement with Hermeticism, Kabbalah, and Neoplatonism is evident throughout his writings. The 3 books of occult philosophy emerged during a period when Europe was experiencing a resurgence of interest in ancient wisdom and esoteric traditions. This era, marked by the Renaissance, saw scholars striving to reconcile classical knowledge with contemporary thought. The treatise is divided into 3 distinct books, each addressing different facets of what was then defined as occult philosophy. The first book explores the natural world, emphasizing the hidden properties of elements, plants, animals, and minerals. Agrippa discusses how these natural objects possess inherent virtues that can be harnessed through proper understanding and application. He delves into the 4 elements, earth, water, air, and fire, and their corresponding qualities, asserting that a deep comprehension of these elements is essential for practicing natural magic. The second book transitions to the influence of celestial bodies on the terrestrial realm. Agrippa examines the astrological correspondences between planets, stars, and earthly events. He elaborates on how the positions and movements of celestial bodies can affect human affairs, weather patterns, and natural phenomena. This section underscores the belief that the macrocosm, the universe, and the microcosm, the individual, are interconnected. The third book delves into the realm of ceremonial or ritual magic. Agrippa provides insights into the invocation of spirits, the use of talismans, and the performance of rituals to achieve specific outcomes. He emphasizes the importance of purity, intention, and adherence to specific protocols when engaging in such practices. This book reflects the synthesis of various esoteric traditions, including Kabbalistic and Hermetic teachings. Agrippa significantly influenced subsequent esoteric and magical traditions. The work's integration of various esoteric disciplines provided a framework that many later practitioners built upon. Despite its acclaim, Agrippa's work was not without controversy. The Catholic Church, wary of the potential heretical implications of such esoteric writings, scrutinized and often condemned works on magic and the occult. Agrippa himself faced criticism and suspicion, leading to periods of hardship and persecution. His writings were included in the Church's Index of Forbidden Books, reflecting the tension between emerging Renaissance humanism and established religious orthodoxy. Feng Shui is an ancient Chinese practice focused on harmonizing individuals with their surrounding environment through the strategic arrangement of spaces, objects, and structures. Also known as Chinese geomancy, it's rooted in the belief that the natural world is filled with vital energy known as qi. This energy can be optimized or disrupted depending on how one's surroundings are put together. Although it's frequently discussed today in terms of interior design and real estate, Feng Shui's origins and historical significance stretch back thousands of years. The early beginnings of Feng Shui can be traced to roughly 6,000 years ago, when people were first starting to align human settlements and grave sites with the natural landscape. By the time of the Zhou dynasty, starting in the 11th century BC, Chinese thinkers had begun to develop more explicit guidelines for positioning homes, temples, and tombs. These alignments were made in ways that aligned with cosmological concepts like the flow of qi and the balance of yin and yang. These guidelines weren't purely aesthetic, they were designed to maintain harmony between heaven, earth, and humanity, which was a central tenet in Chinese thought. For instance, grave sites were carefully chosen to ensure that ancestors rested in areas believed to be charged with auspicious energy, which would, in turn, benefit their living descendants. By the Tang Dynasty, running from the 7th to 10th centuries AD, feng shui masters had gained considerable influence in imperial courts. Royal palaces, government buildings, and entire city layouts began incorporating feng shui principles to ensure stability, prosperity, and harmony. During subsequent dynasties, the popularity of feng shui spread widely, influencing not only official construction projects and the elites, but also the environments of common people. In these periods, a more standardized body of knowledge emerged, with feng shui texts, manuals, and lineage-based traditions passed down through families of masters. Throughout its long history, feng shui has been influenced by various philosophical and religious currents. Confucianism emphasized social harmony and the importance of honoring ancestors, which resonated with feng shui's focus on selecting burial sites that would benefit future generations. Taoism, with its belief in the fundamental balance and flow of the universe, complemented feng shui's emphasis on qi and the natural order. Buddhism also interacted with feng shui practices. Over the centuries, Buddhist temples and monasteries incorporated feng shui principles to ensure spiritual well-being and tranquility. After China began to open up to the world in the 1980s and 1990s, traditional cultural practices, including feng shui, underwent a resurgence. Architects, interior designers, and real estate professionals worldwide have embraced certain feng shui principles, often in a secularized or watered-down form. In Hong Kong, for example, feng shui masters are often consulted before constructing skyscrapers, and the city's skyline is said to reflect these principles. The global popularity of the practice in the late 20th and early 21st centuries can also be attributed to the broader Western interest in holistic practices, alternative medicine, and spirituality. The Philosopher's Stone has long been regarded as one of the most elusive goals in the history of Western esotericism and occultism. It's a legendary substance that alchemists believed could transmute base metals into gold, cure diseases, and even grant extended or eternal life. Though often dismissed as a quaint relic of pre-scientific thought, the quest for the Philosopher's Stone was anchored in a complex interplay of chemistry, spirituality, philosophy, and mysticism. The roots of the Philosopher's Stone concept can be traced to the Hellenistic period, especially in the city of Alexandria, where various philosophical and religious traditions intermingled. Early texts that influenced alchemical thought, such as the writings attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, laid the groundwork for the idea that matter could be transmuted. Over time, these early works merged with Arab and Persian scholarly traditions. Following the Islamic conquests, Greek manuscripts on natural philosophy and the proto-science of alchemy were translated into both Arabic and Persian. By the Middle Ages, when these Arabic and Persian texts were translated back into Latin, European alchemists were primed to embrace the elusive notion of the Philosopher's Stone. In medieval and early Renaissance Europe, alchemy enjoyed periods of both acclaim and suspicion. The distinction between science and magic was not as clear-cut as it is today, and alchemists often combined practical experimentation with esoteric symbolism. The Philosopher's Stone was not merely a literal object. Rather, many alchemists understood it as the culmination of both a chemical and spiritual journey. In this sense, the stone symbolized perfection, enlightenment, and the harmonization of opposites. Achieving it required not just laboratory work, but also moral purification and personal transformation. The stone's ability to turn lead into gold was seen as a metaphor for uplifting the human soul from its base state to divine perfection. One of the most famous figures associated with the quest for the philosopher's stone was Nicolas Flamel, a 14th century French scribe and manuscript seller. Although historical evidence suggests Flamel's reputation as an alchemist was largely a product of later legends rather than contemporary records, he became a central figure in alchemical lore. According to the stories, Flamel, with the guidance of obscure texts and revelations, supposedly discovered the secret of the stone and achieved both wealth and longevity. Similarly, the 16th century Swiss physician and alchemist Paracelsus advanced alchemy's medical dimensions and integrated them with natural philosophy. Though he didn't claim to have found the philosopher's stone, Paracelsus believed in the possibility of extracting essences from substances that could cure illnesses and prolong life. His emphasis on observation, experimentation, and the healing potential of minerals and plants helped transition alchemy toward more empirical approaches. The tradition of seeking the philosopher's stone was not confined to Europe's elite intellectual circles. Courtly alchemists worked under royal patronage, hoping to bolster a monarch's wealth and prestige by conjuring gold from cheaper metals. Individuals like Rudolph II of the Holy Roman Empire were fascinated by alchemy, amassing manuscripts and skilled practitioners in the hope of unlocking nature's secrets. By the 17th and 18th centuries, the rise of the scientific method, better instrumentation, and new theoretical frameworks began to strip alchemy of its mystical elements. By the late 18th century, the dream of the philosopher's stone had effectively receded into myth, replaced by a rigorous approach to understanding of elements and chemical reactions. Also, I mentioned it briefly in passing earlier, but it's really worth emphasizing that the concept of the philosopher's stone was never purely about precious metals. In many treatises, gold was simply the most elevated and incorruptible of metals, symbolizing the highest possible refinement. The stone, therefore, was a metaphor for achieving ultimate purity and understanding the inner workings of nature. This symbolic dimension survived even as the literal pursuit faded. In the 19th and 20th centuries, scholars and esotericists rediscovered alchemical texts with renewed interest, viewing them through psychological and symbolic lenses. Psychologist Carl Jung interpreted alchemical imagery as representations of internal psychic processes. In Jung's reading, the philosopher's stone was the perfected self, reached through individuation and inner work. The concept of the Akashic records has long intrigued spiritual seekers, mystics, and occult scholars. It refers to a purported compendium of every thought, emotion, action, and event that has ever occurred, as well as all future possibilities. Although the idea doesn't originate from any single spiritual tradition, it rose to prominence through late 19th and early 20th century occult movements, most notably within theosophy. Today, it's understood as a metaphysical resource that certain individuals claim they can access to gain profound insight into personal destinies, karmic patterns, and the underlying order of the cosmos. Whether one views it as literal cosmic memory or a symbolic psychological tool, the Akashic records continue to hold a central place in New Age teachings and alternative spirituality. The term Akashic is derived from the Sanskrit word meaning ether or space. In classical Indian philosophies, particularly those found in Hindu and Buddhist texts, the concept was often discussed as a subtle dimension or substrate that permeated everything. While these ancient references didn't speak of an all-encompassing record, The philosophical notion of an etheric substance that receives and holds impressions gave later occultists a conceptual foundation. They speculated that all human experience might imprint itself onto this invisible medium, creating a kind of cosmic library. Such ideas resonated with a general belief in a hidden unity underlying physical existence. In these early frameworks, nothing was entirely lost to time. Instead, every action and thought remained etched into the subtle fabric of reality. However differing from the concept of the Akashic Records is that this concept really appears to have largely referred to the present and future being an unbroken chain of causality from the past. The actual concept of the Akashic Records as a fully formed notion emerged primarily through Theosophy. This was a spiritual movement founded by Helena Petrovna Blavatsky and Henry Steele Olcott in the late 19th century. Blavatsky, who drew heavily on Eastern traditions, claimed that advanced beings known as Mahatmas, or masters, could read these spiritual chronicles. She wrote extensively on esoteric matters, proposing a cosmology that included subtle planes of existence. Within these higher realms, Theosophists believed, lay the Akashic Records, an immense intangible archive housing the blueprint of all souls and the trajectory of every life. Blavatsky and her successors provided detailed discussions, insisting that trained clairvoyants could perceive past events as if they were unfolding before them. Though many contemporaries were skeptical, Theosophy's expansive vision influenced countless seekers, philosophers, and mystics, especially those dissatisfied with purely materialistic views. In the early 20th century, the Akashic Records gained further visibility through the psychic readings of Edgar Cayce, an American clairvoyant who became famous for his trance sessions. Cayce, who was a devout Christian, didn't claim to have discovered the concept on his own. He simply reported that during his altered states of consciousness, he could tune into a universal source of information. He identified this source as the Akashic Records, describing it as a vibrational field of knowledge that could reveal a person's past lives, health issues, and spiritual lessons. While Cayce's descriptions were more narrative than systematic, his popularity introduced millions of people to the idea that everything they'd ever done, or would do, was recorded. His followers insisted that by consulting this library, one could identify unresolved karmic patterns, discover life purposes, and find guidance for personal growth. Beyond Theosophy and Cayce's work, numerous esoteric traditions have embraced similar notions. In Anthroposophy, founded by Rudolf Steiner, the term Akashic Chronicle appears, representing a spiritual record accessible to individuals who've developed a higher form of cognition. Steiner maintained that initiates could train their inner faculties through meditation, moral development, and rigorous discipline to read these cosmic scripts. The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn and various Rosicrucian currents have alluded to analogous concepts, though they often use different terminology. In Sufism, certain mystics have spoken of the preserved tablet, a spiritual record described in Islamic tradition. This concept suggests that God has recorded everything that has ever happened or will ever happen, explaining that everything that happens can only be through the will of God. Although it's not identical to the theosophical concept, parallels can be drawn, as it also entails a divine repository of all events. Over the years, alternative spirituality and New Age movements have refined and diversified approaches to accessing the Akashic Records. Practitioners often describe meditative techniques, guided visualizations, or trance states that purportedly allow them to tune into the subtle frequencies where the records reside. Some adhere to complex rituals, using crystals, incense, and prayers to facilitate the connection. Others rely on inner images, trusting spontaneous impressions as valid pieces of information. According to their guidelines, it's not about forcing the mind to produce a narrative. Instead, it's about quieting the intellect and letting impressions arise naturally. They claim that, with time, readers learn to distinguish their personal imagination from genuine insights drawn from a universal database. Many practitioners say it's a personal transformative experience that can help people understand recurring life challenges, discover karmic influences, and recognize their spiritual trajectory. Some New Age thinkers attempt to reconcile the concept with modern physics, arguing that since energy can never be destroyed, everything that's ever occurred leaves some informational trace. While mainstream science doesn't endorse this interpretation, no empirical evidence supports the existence of such an etheric archive. This line of thinking has found wide appeal. The influence of the Akashic records on modern spiritual movements is undeniable. Contemporary spiritual teachers, life coaches, and healers frequently incorporate the concept into their sessions. They offer workshops and courses on how to access the records, promoting it as a tool for self-discovery and healing. Many who participate in such sessions report life-changing insights, feeling as if they've uncovered hidden motivations, past life traumas, or long-standing karmic debts. In these instances, the Akashic records serve a therapeutic purpose. They offer a framework for interpreting life's challenges in a way that encourages growth and responsibility. Also, it's worth noting that the Akashic records idea is somewhat unique in its explicit focus on recording every detail of existence. While many cultures speak of divine memory or gods who know all human deeds, these notions usually carry a moral or theological dimension rather than describing a neutral archival system. By contrast, the Akashic records are often depicted as impartial and all-encompassing, existing beyond religious frameworks. It's a universal phenomenon rather than the purview of any single deity. This impartiality appeals to those who've drifted away from traditional religion, but still yearn for metaphysical meaning. The records offer a vision of cosmic justice, not necessarily through divine judgment, but via karmic cause and effect. Every action leaves a trace, and every soul eventually encounters the consequences of its past, thus providing a moral structure that emerges naturally from the universal record. Ghost photography emerged in the mid-19th century, captivating the public's imagination by purportedly capturing images of the deceased alongside the living. This phenomenon intertwined technological advancements in photography with the era's burgeoning interest in spiritualism. The inception of ghost photography is closely linked to William Mumler, an American photographer who, in the early 1860s, produced images featuring faint, ghostly figures alongside living subjects. Mumler's most renowned photograph depicts Mary Todd Lincoln with what appears to be the spirit of her husband, President Abraham Lincoln. Despite widespread skepticism and allegations of fraud, Mumler's work gained significant attention, especially among those mourning losses from the Civil War. Early ghost photographs often resulted from long exposure times required by 19th century cameras. If someone moved into the frame during exposure, their image would appear faint and translucent, resembling a ghostly figure. Photographers like Mumler exploited this by intentionally incorporating such effects. They employed double exposure, where two images are superimposed, and composite photography, combining multiple negatives to create a single image, featuring alleged spirits and living people. While ghost photography as practiced in the 19th century has now largely faded into history, this practice was the first attempt to capture unseen entities using this now ubiquitous technology. Berserkers were among the most fearsome figures of the Viking Age, occupying a unique place in Norse history. Though berserkers are widely known, Their connection to the magic rituals and the occult is less widely discussed. The word berserker is derived from an Old Norse term, which translates to bear shirt in English. This term reflects their close association with bear shamanism, as well as their practice of wearing animal pelts into battle. These warriors were famed for their ability to enter a trance-like state of unbridled rage, known as berserker gang, during combat. The berserker gang was characterized by a number of distinct traits: immense physical strength, a seeming immunity to pain, and an overwhelming aggression that struck terror into their enemies. In this state, berserkers were described as impervious to fire and iron, though these claims are often regarded as hyperbole or myth. Some historians suggest their trance-like fury may have been induced by consuming psychoactive substances such as mushrooms. This theory is contentious, but it aligns with shamanic practices found in various cultures, which often include altered states of consciousness to connect with the spiritual or animalistic world. Bear shamanism played a central role in the berserker's identity. In Norse mythology, the bear symbolized immense power, ferocity, and resilience, qualities berserkers sought to emulate. By wearing bear skins and adopting bear-like behaviors, these warriors aimed to embody the spirit of the bear, merging human and animal characteristics. The process of transformation into a berserker likely involved elaborate rituals. These may have included chanting, rhythmic dancing, and fasting to prepare the warrior mentally and physically for the berserker gang. Some historical accounts describe berserkers as biting their shields or howling like animals before combat, further emphasizing their departure from human norms and alignment with animalistic fury. The concept of the third eye is a widely recognized symbol across various spiritual traditions, representing an inner vision, heightened awareness, and a gateway to higher consciousness. This esoteric concept is most commonly associated with the chakras in Hinduism and the pineal gland in modern interpretations. The third eye is traditionally seen as a mystical and esoteric concept in various spiritual traditions, particularly in Hinduism and Buddhism. In Hinduism, the third eye is associated with the Ajna chakra, located between the eyebrows, which is considered the center of intuition, intellect, and spiritual insight. This chakra is believed to connect individuals to their inner selves and the universe, enabling them to perceive realities beyond the physical world. It is often symbolized by a bindi, a mark on the forehead representing the divine vision of inner reality. Buddhism similarly associates the third eye with mindfulness and awakening, a state where one transcends ordinary perception to achieve spiritual enlightenment. The third eye is seen as the path to realizing the true nature of existence, free from the illusions of the material world. In other cultures, the third eye has also been recognized in different forms. For instance, in Egyptian mythology, it is often compared to the Eye of Horus, a symbol of protection, royal authority, and good health. In Celtic traditions, there's evidence Druids believed in a metaphorical eye that granted insight into the unseen and the true reality of the world. In more contemporary interpretations, particularly in the West, the third eye is often linked to the pineal gland, a small endocrine gland in the brain. The pineal gland has been a subject of fascination due to its connection with light, sleep regulation, and the production of melatonin. Some holistic practitioners and spiritual teachers believe that the pineal gland, when activated, can lead to the awakening of the third eye, thereby enhancing intuition, spiritual insight, and even psychic abilities. The association between the third eye and the pineal gland gained popularity in the 20th century, especially through the works of New Age thinkers and theosophists. This belief has led to various practices aimed at opening the third eye, such as meditation, visualization, and certain yoga practices that are designed to stimulate this gland and awaken higher consciousness. In many spiritual traditions, opening the third eye is seen as a crucial step towards achieving enlightenment. It involves transcending the limitations of the ego and the material world to gain a deeper understanding of the self and the universe. Psychic vampires, often referred to as energy vampires, are individuals who drain the emotional or psychic energy of others, leaving their victims feeling exhausted or depleted. Unlike the mythical blood-sucking vampires of folklore, psychic vampires feed on the life force or emotional energy of their targets. This concept has roots in various cultural beliefs and has been explored in both occult practices and psychological studies. The idea of energy vampirism dates back to ancient civilizations. In Eastern mysticism, concepts like ki in Chinese philosophy or prana in Hindu traditions refer to the vital life force present in all living beings. Occult practitioners believe that psychic vampires have the ability to absorb this life force from others. In Western esoteric traditions, such as Hermeticism and Theosophy, discussions about astral energies and the manipulation thereof often include references to beings that can siphon these energies. Psychic vampires typically exhibit behaviors that enable them to siphon energy from others. They may be highly self-centered, lacking empathy, and often engage in manipulative tactics to elicit emotional responses. Common traits include constant complaining, playing the victim, or creating unnecessary drama to draw attention and energy toward themselves. These individuals may not always be conscious of their actions, but the impact on their victims is palpable, often resulting in feelings of fatigue, irritability, or emotional distress. Psychic vampires can be categorized based on their methods and intentions. Intentional psychic vampires are individuals who are aware of their actions and deliberately seek to drain others' energy for personal gain or satisfaction. They may employ specific techniques to tap into others' life force, often under the guise of seeking help or support. Unintentional psychic vampires are people who are typically unaware of their draining behavior. They might be dealing with personal issues, leading them to unconsciously draw energy from those around them. Their neediness and constant demands can leave others feeling exhausted and depleted through no intentional fault of their own. In certain situations, individuals who are not typically energy drainers may become psychic vampires. High-stress environments or personal crises can cause someone to temporarily exhibit energy-draining behaviors. Notably, unlike most other occult topics discussed in this iceberg series, psychic vampirism is likely something that's been experienced by everyone at some point in their lives. Everyone has had that experience of encountering a person who, for whatever reason, just has the ability to completely drain them. Angel numbers are sequences of repeating digits, such as 111, 222, or 333, that many believe carry spiritual significance. These patterns are thought to be messages from the spiritual realm, offering guidance or reassurance in one's life. The concept has gained popularity in recent years, especially through social media platforms where individuals share their experiences and interpretations of these numbers. Numerology is the belief that numbers hold mystical properties and can influence human life. It was Doreen Virtue, a New Age author and spiritual teacher, who popularized the term angel numbers in the early 2000s. She proposed that these repeating number sequences are messages from guardian angels, offering guidance and insight into one's life path. Each angel number is believed to carry a specific meaning. For instance, the number 111 is often associated with new beginnings and opportunities, while 444 is seen as a sign of protection and encouragement. These interpretations are not universally standardized and can vary among different practitioners and cultures. The significance attributed to these numbers often depends on personal beliefs and the context in which they appear. Despite their popularity, angel numbers have faced criticism and skepticism from both skeptics and believers in numerology. Some argue that the interpretations are too generalized and can be attributed to the psychological phenomenon known as confirmation bias. This is where individuals see patterns that align with their beliefs or desires. Many skeptics who believe in numerology generally believe that angel numbers are an extremely basic and commodified version of a highly complex discipline. Reiki, originating from Japan in the early 20th century, is a form of energy healing that emphasizes the transfer of universal life energy through a practitioner's hands to promote well-being. The term Reiki combines two Japanese words, rei, meaning universal, and ki, meaning something approximate to life energy. This practice is grounded in the belief that an unseen life force energy flows through all living beings, and disruptions or blockages in this energy can lead to illness or stress. By channeling this energy, Reiki aims to restore balance and support the body's natural healing processes. The development of Reiki is attributed to Mikao Usui, born in 1865 in Japan. Usui, who had some training as a Buddhist monk, had a deep interest in spiritual practices and healing methods. In the early 1920s, after a period of fasting and meditation on Mount Karama, he reported experiencing a profound spiritual awakening that led to the development of this healing system. Usui began teaching this method, emphasizing self-healing and spiritual development. He established a clinic in Tokyo and trained over 2,000 students in his lifetime. After Usui's death in 1926, one of his prominent students, Chujiro Hayashi, continued to practice and teach Reiki. In the 1930s, Hawayo Takada, a Japanese-American woman, sought treatment from Hayashi's clinic in Japan for her health issues. Impressed by the results, she became a dedicated student and later a Reiki master. Takada introduced Reiki to the United States upon her return, establishing clinics and training practitioners across the country. Her efforts were instrumental in spreading Reiki throughout the Western world. Reiki is, of course, a very popular treatment method until this day, and I'm sure many of you in my audience have participated in a Reiki session or know someone who has. A typical Reiki session involves the recipient lying fully clothed on a massage table, while the practitioner places their hands lightly on or just above specific areas of the body. These hand positions correspond to major organs and energy centers, commonly known as chakras. The practitioner holds each position for several minutes, allowing the flow of energy to address areas of need. Sessions usually last between 45 to 90 minutes, depending on the practitioner's approach and the client's needs. Some practitioners incorporate additional elements such as crystals or aromatherapy to enhance the experience. While many individuals report positive experiences with Reiki, including reduced stress and improved well-being, scientific research on its efficacy remains inconclusive. Hey everyone, it's Jimmy here, just reminding you to like and subscribe and to hit the notification bell. If you watch my videos regularly, you know I've set a goal of 15,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and with your help, we're almost there. Anyway, let's get back to the video. The Hand of Glory is a dark artifact rooted in European folklore, particularly associated with thieves and dark magic. Traditionally, it's the preserved hand of a hanged criminal, often the left hand or the, quote, hand that did the deed. This gruesome talisman was believed to possess supernatural powers, especially when combined with a candle made from the fat of the same executed person. The hand would then serve as a candlestick for a candle made from the fat of the same individual, with the wick crafted from his hair. When lit, the hand of glory was said to render all within its presence motionless, facilitating undisturbed theft. Further, the artifact was said to be able to assist with picking any lock, but again only when lit. The process of creating a hand of glory was intricate and steeped in ritual. According to an 18th century grimoire, the hand had to be cut from the body of a hanged man, wrapped in a piece of funeral wrapping, and squeezed to remove any remaining blood. It was then placed in an earthenware vessel containing a mixture of salt, saltpeter, and pepper, left for a fortnight, and subsequently dried in the sun during the hottest days of summer. The only surviving examples of a hand of glory is housed in the Whitby Museum in North Yorkshire in England. Discovered in the early 20th century hidden within the wall of a thatched cottage in Castleton, it was identified by a local historian. The museum describes it as a mummified human hand, believed to be the only known example of its kind. Notably, the reason why this occult artifact may sound familiar to many of you is due to Harry Potter. In this series, it's depicted as a magical object that provides light only to the holder, leaving others in darkness. This portrayal aligns with traditional beliefs about the hand's ability to aid thieves by confounding their victims. Natural magic, as a concept and practice, thrived during the Renaissance, representing a synthesis of empirical observation and mystical thought. It sought to manipulate and harness the forces of nature, employing materials like plants, stones, and celestial influences to produce specific effects. This branch of magic stood apart from ceremonial magic, which relied on invoking spirits or supernatural beings, and was instead closely aligned with natural philosophy, the precursor to modern science. Natural magic operates on the belief that the universe is interconnected and governed by natural laws, which could be understood and applied. Practitioners utilized correspondences, connections between objects, substances, or celestial bodies, to effect changes in the physical world. Common areas of focus included astrology, astronomy, alchemy, and botany. Notably, unlike many other magical practices which were discouraged by both secular and church authorities, natural magic was generally allowed to flourish for reasons which will become apparent. Renaissance thinkers sought to reconcile ancient esoteric traditions with Christian theology. Natural magic was often framed as the quote-unquote scientific exploration of God's creation, rather than an act of heresy. Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa, in his seminal work, 3 Books of Occult Philosophy, described natural magic as the highest form of natural philosophy, merging intellectual inquiry with mystical practice. Natural magic drew heavily from classical sources, including the works of Pythagoras, Plato, and Aristotle, and was deeply influenced by Hermetic texts and Neoplatonism. The rediscovery and translation of these works during the Renaissance spurred a renewed interest in esoteric knowledge, blending it with emerging scientific methodologies. While some intellectuals sought to integrate natural magic within a Christian framework, its association with occultism often drew suspicion from religious authorities. The line between natural and demonic magic was not always clear, leading to accusations of heresy. Nevertheless, many argued that understanding and harnessing nature's secrets was a divine pursuit, revealing the complexity and beauty of creation. Natural magic can be seen as a bridge between mysticism and the scientific revolution. Disciplines like astrology and alchemy, once integral to natural magic, laid the groundwork for modern astronomy and chemistry. Parrot astrology is a traditional form of fortune-telling practiced predominantly in the Indian states of Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh. This unique method involves trained parrots selecting cards that are then interpreted by astrologers to predict an individual's future. Historically, parrot astrologers would set up their booths in bustling marketplaces or under the shade of trees, attracting passers-by seeking insights into their futures. In a typical parrot astrology session, the astrologer sits with a caged parrot and a deck of 27 cards, each depicting various Hindu deities or significant symbols. When a client approaches, the astrologer asks for their name and then opens the cage, allowing the parrot to emerge. The parrot selects a card from the spread using its beak and returns to the cage. The astrologer interprets the chosen card to provide predictions or guidance to the client. Parrots hold a special place in Hindu mythology and culture. They are often associated with the god Kamadeva, the deity of love, symbolizing passion and desire. This cultural reverence adds a layer of significance to the practice of parrot astrology, as the bird is not just a tool, but perceived as a sacred medium connecting the divine to the human realm. Ceremonial magic, often referred to as ritual or high magic, is a tradition that employs elaborate rituals and symbolic tools to invoke spiritual entities or achieve specific outcomes. Unlike folk magic, which often relies on simple, spontaneous practices, ceremonial magic is characterized by its structured ceremonies, detailed rituals, and the use of consecrated instruments. Practitioners, known as magicians or ceremonial magicians, aim to connect with higher spiritual realms, seeking personal transformation, enlightenment, or the manifestation of specific desires. The origins of ceremonial magic can be traced back to ancient civilizations, where rituals and invocations were integral to religious and spiritual practices. In ancient Egypt, the concept of Heka encompassed both the god of magic and the practice itself, highlighting the significance of ritualistic magic in their culture. The Egyptians believed that through Heka, they could influence both the natural and supernatural worlds, ensuring harmony and balance. Similarly, in ancient Mesopotamia, priests performed intricate rituals to communicate with deities and spirits, seeking guidance and favor. These early practices laid the groundwork for the development of more structured magical systems in later cultures. During the Greco-Roman period, magic became more systematized, with the emergence of texts detailing rituals, invocations, and the use of magical tools. The Greek magical papyri, a collection of texts from the 2nd century BC to the 5th century AD, contain a wealth of information on magical practices, including spells, hymns, and rituals. These texts illustrate the blending of Egyptian, Greek, and Roman magical traditions, reflecting a syncretic approach to ceremonial magic. This approach allowed for practitioners to pick and choose from a variety of spiritual, religious, and occult traditions to achieve their goals. In medieval Europe, ceremonial magic was often intertwined with religious practices. The Church distinguished between natural magic, which was considered acceptable, and demonic magic, which was condemned. And just for brief context, in case you forgot or skipped ahead, natural magic constituted activities such as astrology, astronomy, botany, alchemy, and other similar practices. Despite ecclesiastical opposition, grimoires, manuals containing instructions for performing magic, invoking spirits, and crafting talismans circulated among scholars and practitioners. The medieval period also saw the rise of alchemy, a practice that combined elements of chemistry, philosophy, and mysticism. Alchemists sought to transform base metals into gold and discover the elixir of life, often employing ceremonial rituals in their work. The symbolic language and rituals of alchemy significantly influenced the development of ceremonial magic, though the practice was still widely viewed as acceptable by the authorities. The Renaissance era marked a resurgence of interest in Hermeticism, Kabbalah, and alchemy, further enriching the tradition of ceremonial magic. Figures like Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa contributed significantly by synthesizing various magical traditions into comprehensive works. His 3 books of occult philosophy became a cornerstone for later practitioners. During this period, the distinction between magic and emerging scientific thought was not clearly defined. Many scholars engaged in both scientific inquiry and magical practices, viewing them as complementary paths to understanding the natural world. This era also witnessed the translation and dissemination of ancient texts, making esoteric knowledge more accessible to European scholars. The late 19th and early 20th centuries marked a pivotal period with the formation of esoteric societies, such as the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. This organization played a crucial role in systematizing and popularizing ceremonial magic practices, influencing subsequent traditions and practitioners. Members of the Golden Dawn, including notable figures like Aleister Crowley, contributed to the development and of modern ceremonial magic rituals and teachings. Ceremonial magic is distinguished by its structured rituals, each meticulously designed to achieve specific spiritual or material objectives. Central to these practices is the casting of a magic circle, a sacred space that serves as a protective barrier against external influences and a focal point for spiritual energies. Within this circle, practitioners perform rituals that may include invocations, evocations, and the use of symbolic gestures and words of power. A fundamental ritual in many modern traditions is the lesser ritual of the pentagram. This ritual involves tracing pentagrams in the air at the cardinal points, accompanied by specific divine names, to cleanse the space of unwanted energies and establish a sacred environment. Another key aspect is the use of consecrated tools, often referred to as magical weapons. These include the wand, representing will, the cup, symbolizing understanding, the sword or dagger, denoting intellect, and the pentacle, embodying material reality. Each tool is crafted and consecrated according to specific guidelines, imbuing it with symbolic significance and spiritual potency. The practice of invoking or evoking spiritual entities is also central to ceremonial magic. Invocation involves calling upon higher spiritual beings, such as angels or deities, to gain wisdom or assistance. Evocation, on the other hand, entails summoning spirits or other entities to appear within the magic circle, often for the purpose of obtaining information or performing tasks. Notably, these two terms are often used interchangeably, with invocation generally involving calling upon angels, and invocation generally involving the summoning of demonic entities. Baba Vanga, often referred to as the Nostradamus of the Balkans, was a Bulgarian mystic renowned for her predictions. Born Vangelia Pandeva on January 31, 1911, she lost her sight at the age of 12 after being swept away by a tornado and subsequently found alive with her eyes covered in sand. Her journey into mysticism began in her teens when she reportedly helped her father locate a stolen sheep through a detailed description of its hiding place. By her early 30s, Vanga's reputation as a clairvoyant grew, and she began receiving numerous visitors, including politicians and celebrities, seeking her prophecies. Baba Vanga claimed her visions were given to her by invisible entities and described a process where she felt a presence, sometimes hearing voices, which conveyed information. Among her most notable predictions, Vanga is said to have foreseen 9/11. In 1989, she predicted that American brethren will fall after being attacked by the steel birds. Innocent blood will be gushing. Many interpret this as a reference to the tragic events involving the World Trade Center. Another famous prophecy was her prediction regarding the Kursk submarine disaster in 2000 in Russia. Vanga claimed that Kursk would be covered with water and the whole world will weep over it, a statement made 2 decades prior. Vanga's predictions extended into global politics. She predicted that the 44th President of the United States would be African American, which came true with Barack Obama's election. She also spoke of Europe ceasing to exist by 2017, which some interpret as a prediction of Brexit. Baba Vanga also ventured into the realms of science and extraterrestrial life. She predicted significant scientific advancements, including a cure for cancer involving iron elements, and mentioned contact with extraterrestrial beings. She stated they would arrive on Earth and interact with humans. Despite the impressive accuracy attributed to some of her predictions, skeptics argue that many of these prophecies are either too vague or interpreted post hoc to fit events. There are claims that many predictions attributed to her were fabricated or misinterpreted due to translation issues from Bulgarian and other languages. Throughout her life, Vanga was studied by various Bulgarian and Soviet scientists who were apparently intrigued by her apparent abilities. Some researchers concluded she had an 85% accuracy rate in her predictions, although this figure is widely debated and disputed. Baba Vanga's legacy continues to fascinate people worldwide. Her home in Petrich, Bulgaria, remains a place of pilgrimage. She passed away in Sofia, the capital of Bulgaria, in 1996. Her foresights, whether believed to be divinely inspired or the result of keen intuition, remain a subject of speculation and fascination till this day. Automatic writing, also known as psychography, is the process of writing without conscious intention, often attributed to spiritual or subconscious influences. Practitioners claim that during automatic writing, their hand moves involuntarily, producing text that originates from the subconscious mind or external entities. Historically, automatic writing has roots in various cultural and spiritual practices. In Chinese folk religion, a form known as Fuji involved using a suspended sieve or tray to guide a stick that wrote characters, believed to be messages from deities or spirits. In the West, the practice gained prominence during the 19th century with the rise of spiritualism, where mediums claimed to channel messages from the deceased through automatic writing. Psychologists have studied automatic writing to understand its origins and implications. Some suggest it results from the ideomotor effect, where individuals make motions unconsciously. Others view it as a manifestation of dissociative states, where the person's consciousness is divided, allowing hidden aspects of the psyche to emerge. In contemporary times, automatic writing is often used as a therapeutic tool to explore the subconscious mind. From an occult perspective, automatic writing is viewed as a profound method of accessing wisdom beyond ordinary conscious awareness. Practitioners often describe the process as a gateway to spiritual guidance, or a connection with energies, spirits, or even higher realms of consciousness. They argue that the messages received through automatic writing often carry insights or knowledge that surpass the writer's usual understanding, suggesting an external or deeper internal source. Many believe the practice serves as a direct line to the subconscious mind, enabling individuals to bypass rational filters and tap into buried thoughts, emotions, or even latent creativity. For others, automatic writing is seen as a form of divine communication, where entities such as guides, angels, or ancestors transmit guidance or answers to pressing questions. Proponents also highlight the therapeutic benefits, claiming it facilitates emotional release and fosters self-discovery. Some report feelings of clarity, purpose, or spiritual connection after sessions, emphasizing the transformative power of the experience. However, critics argue that automatic writing lacks empirical evidence and is susceptible to the writer's biases and expectations. They further point out that the content produced often reflects the individual's knowledge and experiences, casting doubt on claims of external influence. The petrifying well, also known as the dropping well, is located in Knaresborough in North Yorkshire in England. This unique geological formation has the ability to turn everyday objects into stone. The earliest documented reference to the petrifying well dates back to 1538, when John Leyland, an antiquary to Henry VIII, mentioned the well in his writings. Leyland described the well as a place where people believed in its miraculous healing powers, often drinking or showering under its waters. The well gained notoriety through its association with the legendary soothsayer Mother Shipton, born Ursula Southiel in 1488. Born in a nearby cave, now known as Mother Shipton's Cave, she was rumored to be the daughter of a local woman and the devil, a claim that added to her sinister reputation. Her association with the well and its perceived magical properties only heightened the site's mysterious allure. According to folklore, Mother Shipton's prophecies included predictions of the Great Fire of London and the defeat of the Spanish Armada. In 1630, the well and the land around it were sold to Sir Charles Slingsby, Queen Elizabeth's courtier. He submerged his family's crest in the well, which petrified, becoming a stony testament to his visit. This event helped elevate the well's status, associating it with the royal court and increasing its allure among the nobility. Sir Charles Slingsby capitalized on its growing fame by charging visitors for tours, making it England's first paid visitor attraction. This move cemented the well's status as a must-see destination, a status it maintains to this day. According to modern understanding, the petrifying well's unique ability to petrify objects is not due to witchcraft or magic, but rather a natural geological process. The well's water is rich in minerals, particularly calcium carbonate and calcium sulfate. Researchers suggest that the water's high mineral saturation is due to its route through an extensive system of underground caverns, where it dissolves limestone before emerging at the well. When the water flows over objects, these minerals deposit a hard shell, similar to the formation of stalactites and stalagmites in caves. Remarkably, the petrification process can occur in just 3 to 5 months, depending on the object placed within. This rapid transformation has made the well a subject of scientific interest and a favorite spot for tourists to leave items like teddy bears, hats, and even bicycles. While the scientific explanation of the petrifying process is widely accepted, there have been numerous theories and speculations about the well's powers throughout history. In the past, locals believed the well was cursed or blessed by supernatural forces. Some thought it was a manifestation of the divine, serving as a form of protection or curse depending on the object or person involved. Another widely believed aspect of the well is its connection to healing and protective powers. For centuries, people believed that drinking or bathing in the well's waters could cure ailments and offer protection from evil. Rosicrucianism, a mystical and esoteric tradition, emerged in early 17th century Europe. It first gained prominence with the publication of 3 manifestos: the Fama Fraternitatis in 1614, the Confessio Fraternitatis in 1615, and the Chemical Wedding of Christian Rosenkreutz in 1617. These texts introduced the mythical Christian Rosenkreutz, depicted as a German nobleman who traveled extensively in the Middle East. During his travels, he's claimed to have acquired profound knowledge in alchemy, mysticism, and esoteric traditions long lost to Europeans. Upon returning to Europe, he allegedly established the Fraternity of the Rose Cross to disseminate this wisdom. The Fama Fraternitatis describes Rosenkreutz's journey and his intention to reform the world through the secret fraternity. It portrays the Brotherhood as a group of enlightened individuals possessing advanced scientific and spiritual knowledge. The Confessio Fraternitatis elaborates on these ideas, presenting the movement as a call for universal enlightenment and the renewal of human knowledge. The third manifesto, The Chemical Wedding of Christian Rosenkreutz, is an allegorical tale steeped in alchemical symbolism, portraying a mystical initiation process in the Middle East. The anonymity of these manifestos fueled speculation about their authorship. Many scholars believe they were the work of Johann Valentin Andrea, a German Lutheran theologian, though this remains contested. This is largely due to the fact that Andrea himself, in his autobiography, claimed that he wrote the books. However, some true believers ascribe the works to Count Saint-Germain, who they also believe may have been Christian Rosenkreutz himself. At its core, Rosicrucianism blends Christian mysticism with elements of Hermeticism, Kabbalah, and alchemy. The central symbol of the Rose Cross represents the union of spiritual and material realms, encapsulating the movement's belief in the interconnectedness of science, religion, and art. The Rosicrucian manifestos emphasize the pursuit of esoteric knowledge to uncover the hidden principles governing nature and the divine. They advocate for personal enlightenment through meditation, study, and a mystical understanding of the universe. Central to Rosicrucian philosophy is the idea of universal reformation, a concept that seeks to harmonize humanity with divine laws through scientific and spiritual advancements. Alchemy, a key aspect of Rosicrucian thought, serves as both a literal and symbolic practice. While alchemists sought to transform base metals into gold, Rosicrucians viewed this process as a metaphor for spiritual transformation, emphasizing the purification of the soul. The rise of Rosicrucianism coincided with significant intellectual and cultural shifts in Europe. The Scientific Revolution, Protestant Reformation, and Renaissance humanism provided fertile ground for esoteric movements. Rosicrucian ideals resonated with those seeking an alternative to dogmatic religious and scholarly traditions that had predominated prior. During this period, Europe witnessed a surge in interest in occult-based proto-sciences, such as astrology, alchemy, and mineralogy. The Catholic Church and other authorities viewed Rosicrucianism with suspicion, associating it with heretical ideas and secretive practices. The manifestos' call for reformation and their critique of established institutions further fueled these concerns. Despite this, Rosicrucianism persisted, shaping the development of Western esotericism. Rosicrucianism played a pivotal role in the evolution of Western esoteric traditions. Its ideas influenced numerous secret societies and philosophical movements, particularly during the 18th and 19th centuries. The Order of the Golden and Rosy Cross, established in the mid-18th century, integrated Rosicrucian principles with alchemical practices. This society emphasized ritualistic teachings and aimed to continue the Rosicrucian legacy of spiritual and intellectual enlightenment. The Societas Rosicruciana in Anglia, founded in 1865, restricted membership to Master Masons, reflecting the intertwined histories of Rosicrucianism and Freemasonry. This organization sought to study and preserve Rosicrucian traditions, adapting them to a Masonic framework. Perhaps the most significant Rosicrucian influence is seen in the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Established in 1887, this influential occult society drew heavily from Rosicrucian symbolism, rituals, and philosophies. The Golden Dawn's teachings on ceremonial magic, tarot, and mysticism profoundly impacted modern occultism, attracting notable figures like Aleister Crowley. Rosicrucianism has faced skepticism and controversy since its inception. Critics have strongly questioned the authenticity of its claims, particularly the existence of Christian Rosenkreuz and the Brotherhood of the Rose Cross. Some historians view the Rosicrucian manifestos as satirical works or allegorical critiques of contemporary society, rather than literal accounts. The secretive nature of Rosicrucian societies has also fueled conspiracy theories, often linking them to Freemasonry, the Illuminati, and other secretive organizations. These associations have contributed to the perception of Rosicrucianism as a mysterious and enigmatic tradition. In Buddhist cosmology, the concept of preta, commonly known as hungry ghosts, represents beings tormented by insatiable hunger and thirst. Originating from Sanskrit, the term preta translates to departed or deceased, but within Buddhist teachings, it specifically denotes spirits suffering due to past misdeeds, particularly greed and jealousy. These beings are depicted with emaciated bodies, small mouth-like structures, narrow necks, and distended bellies, symbolizing their unending cravings and the futility of their desires. The portrayal of hungry ghosts serves as a moral lesson within Buddhism, emphasizing the consequences of excessive greed, jealousy, and selfishness. By depicting the preta as beings suffering from unfulfilled desires, Buddhist teachings encourage adherents to cultivate virtues such as generosity, compassion, and detachment from desire. The concept of the hungry ghost integrated itself throughout East Asia as Buddhism spread. As Buddhism spread to China, the concept of preta was integrated into local beliefs. In Chinese Buddhism, these spirits are believed to inhabit a realm between humans and hell, suffering from extreme hunger and thirst as retribution for their past actions. The Hungry Ghost Festival, or Zhongyuan Festival, held on the 15th day of the 7th lunar month, is a significant event where offerings of food, incense, and money are made to appease these spirits. In Japan, the concept of preta was adopted as the gaki, maintaining the notion of spirits tormented by insatiable hunger. The Obon Festival, celebrated in mid-August, is a time when families honor their ancestors, believing that the spirits return to the world of the living during this period. While Obon primarily focuses on ancestral spirits, the influence of the gaki concept is evident in the rituals performed to ensure that all spirits, including hungry ghosts, are appeased. Monks often chant sutras and make offerings to prevent these spirits from causing harm. In Korea, the concept of hungry ghosts, known as agui, is influenced by both Buddhist and indigenous shamanistic traditions. These spirits are believed to arise from unfulfilled desires, excessive greed, or unresolved karmic debt in their past lives. Like in China and Japan, agui are depicted as tormented beings with insatiable cravings, reflecting moral lessons about the dangers of attachment and selfishness. Rituals to appease the agui are performed during Buddhist ceremonies include food offerings and prayers. However, the Korean conception of hungry ghosts is also influenced by shamanism, where some believe shamanistic practices can permanently alleviate the suffering of deceased relatives. The Sudarium of Oviedo, also known as the Shroud of Oviedo, is a blood-stained linen measuring approximately 34 by 21 inches. It is a revered religious relic that is believed to be the cloth placed over the face of Jesus Christ after his crucifixion. The earliest mention of the Sudarium dates back to 570 AD, when Antoninus of Piacenza described it being kept in a monastery near Jerusalem. To protect it from the Persian invasion of Jerusalem in 614 AD, the cloth was taken to Alexandria, then through northern Africa, and eventually arrived in Spain. It found refuge in Cartagena, Seville, Toledo, and finally in Oviedo around 718 AD to escape the advancing Moorish forces. King Alfonso II of Asturias built a chapel to house it in 840 AD, and it has remained in the Cathedral of San Salvador in Oviedo ever since. The sudarium is a simple linen cloth with no image but is marked with numerous bloodstains. In 1989, a comprehensive investigation was conducted by the Spanish Center for Syndenology. This study, involving experts from various fields, analyzed the cloth's bloodstains, pollen grains, and fabric structure. Carbon dating tests have suggested that the sudarium dates back to the 7th century. However, these results have been considered imprecise, and further testing is required to confirm the exact age. The presence of pollens from Palestine, North Africa, and Spain further supports the historical journey of the sudarium as documented through various periods. One of the most intriguing aspects of the sudarium is its potential connection to the Shroud of Turin. Researchers have used a method called polarized image overlay technique to compare bloodstain patterns on both cloths, finding over 100 points of correspondence. The blood on the sudarium is type AB, which matches the blood type found on the Shroud of Turin, and is relatively rare among medieval Europeans, but common in the Middle East. These similarities suggest that the same person could have been wrapped in both cloths, with the sudarium used initially to cover the head before the shroud was placed over the entire body. Findings indicate that the cloth was placed on a head tilted forward and to the right, consistent with someone who was crucified. Further forensic studies have shown that the stains include blood from deep puncture wounds, possibly from a crown of thorns, and fluids from pulmonary edema. The sudarium is displayed 3 times a year in the Cathedral of Oviedo: on Good Friday, on the Feast of the Triumph of the Cross, September 14th, and 7 days after this feast, September 21st. Despite being overshadowed by the Shroud of Turin, the sudarium has gained interest for its potential to authenticate the shroud and its historical and religious significance. Pilgrims and researchers continue to visit Oviedo to view this ancient relic and study its mysteries. The God-worshipping society, founded by Hong Xiuquan in the mid-19th century, was a religious movement in China that combined elements of Christianity with Chinese folk traditions. It played a pivotal role in the development of the Taiping Rebellion, one of the largest and deadliest civil conflicts in world history. The society's teachings and practices not only aimed at religious reform, but also carried a strong political message against the ruling Qing dynasty. The group's eventual transition from a religious sect to a full-fledged rebellion was motivated by a unique blend of spiritual beliefs, social grievances, and millenarian aspirations. The God-worshipping society began with Hong Xiuquan's spiritual visions. After failing multiple attempts at the imperial examinations to become a bureaucrat, Hong experienced a series of mystical visions in which he believed he was appointed as a younger brother of Jesus Christ. Notably, and keep this in mind for later, these examinations had a 1% pass rate, and passing the examination was the equivalent of having quote-unquote made it in society. Also, it's important to keep in mind that this 1% pass rate was for people who had devoted their entire lives to studying for this exam. For all but the wealthiest families, this required the extended family and beyond to place resources into a talented young person to begin studies at an early age. But I digress. Hong's interpretation of Christianity was influenced by Protestant missionaries in China, but took a syncretic turn. He blended his understanding of Christian monotheism with Chinese religious elements, particularly a focus on Shangdi, the traditional high god of Chinese culture. These teachings were deeply intertwined with a message of justice, positioning Hong as a divine leader who could guide his followers toward a utopian society. Hong developed the society as a platform to oppose the social injustices suffered by the poor. Initially, their message spread among marginalized groups, such as the Hakka Chinese people, who faced discrimination in Qing society. The society attracted thousands of converts, including miners, laborers, and small farmers. It grew in popularity largely due to the promise of a better life, free from oppression by local elites and the Qing government. The God-worshipping society fostered a sense of community through its stringent religious and social structure. Members were required to abandon traditional Confucian and Buddhist practices in favor of the society's Christian-inspired beliefs. The group also emphasized collective responsibility, establishing communal living arrangements and a common treasury where wealth was shared among all members. The society's ideology demanded strict moral behavior, including chastity and sobriety, creating a form of religious discipline intended to purify the believers and prepare them for the coming era of divine rule. A distinctive aspect of the God-worshipping society's theology was its millenarian vision. Hong preached that the world was corrupt, ruled by demons, i.e., the Qing dynasty, and that God had chosen him to lead his followers in the creation of a new, divinely sanctioned kingdom. His concept of the heavenly kingdom of great peace was a utopian vision that would eventually come to define the movement. This kingdom was intended to be a theocratic state that would replace the Qing dynasty, governed by principles of equality and justice. As the God-worshipping society expanded, it began to take on a more militant character. By 1847, Hong Xiuquan had amassed a large following, which were then armed and trained to resist local authorities. Conflicts between the society's members and Qing officials escalated, leading to the Jintian Uprising in 1851. This marked the beginning of the Taiping Rebellion, as the society formally declared war against the Qing government, calling for the establishment of the Heavenly Kingdom. Hong's declaration of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom in 1851 was not just a religious proclamation, but also a political move. It positioned the society as a direct challenge to the Qing authority, framing the struggle as one between the forces of good, the God-worshippers, and evil, the Qing. The rebellion gained momentum, and by 1853, the Taiping forces captured Nanjing, China's southern capital, which they declared as the capital of their divine kingdom. Under the rule of the God-worshipping society, the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom adopted radical policies that sought to restructure Chinese society. The leadership promoted gender equality, abolished foot binding, and redistributed land among peasants. The state also strictly regulated behavior according to religious laws, banning practices such as gambling. These reforms were accompanied by strict authoritarian control, which did not ingratiate the new subjects of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom to their new monarch. Despite early successes, the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom struggled to maintain cohesion. Internal power struggles emerged between different factions within the leadership. Further, multiple leaders other than Hong began to claim to communicate directly with God, undermining Hong's authority. These divisions, coupled with external conflicts with the Qing military, weakened the Taiping forces. After more than a decade of intense fighting, the rebellion was finally crushed by Qing forces, aided financially and militarily by Western powers, in 1864. The question of whether Hong Xiuquan truly believed in his divine visions, or whether he was motivated by a hunger for power, has been subject to significant debate. Hong's spiritual experiences, especially his claim of being the younger brother of Jesus Christ, appear sincere at the outset, with some claiming that this was likely the result of a mental break. According to this theory, Hong, after failing the bureaucratic examinations, collapsed upon the realization that he had let down his entire extended family who were relying upon his success. However, it's speculated that he recovered from this experience and continued to play the role of the divine king of the Taiping Kingdom as a way of increasing his power. Personally, I can't think of another time an occult-based secret society governed tens of millions of people, so I find the story of the God-worshipping society particularly intriguing. Nostradamus is perhaps the most famous seer in history that is not a holy man, with some placing significant weight upon his prophecies. His book, generally known in English as The Prophecies, and published in 1555, contains hundreds of cryptic quatrains that many believe predict future events. These prophecies have intrigued people for centuries due to their perceived accuracy and the mysterious nature of their language, which blends French, Latin, and Greek. Nostradamus wrote his prophecies as a series of quatrains, four-line verses that were deliberately vague and obscure. This ambiguity has been a key factor in the endurance of his prophecies, as it allows for broad interpretations. His works have been translated into numerous languages, and Nostradamus enthusiasts continue to examine his writings to uncover potential insights into future events. Despite his cryptic language, Nostradamus gained substantial fame during his lifetime, largely due to the endorsement of influential figures like Catherine de' Medici, Queen Consort of France. She invited Nostradamus to her court in 1556, and his reputation as a visionary grew considerably. One of Nostradamus's most famous alleged predictions is the Great Fire of London in 1666. A particular quatrain, "The blood of the just will be demanded of London, burnt by fire in the year 66, is frequently cited as a direct reference to this event. The fire, which ravaged large parts of the city, broke out in early September 1666, and has often been interpreted as a fulfillment of this prophecy. While the prediction mentions the number 66 and a disaster befalling London, critics argue that the verse is too vague, and there are no clear references to the specific nature of the fire. Nonetheless, the close match of the year and location has made this one of the most cited accurate prophecies attributed to Nostradamus. One of Nostradamus's most chillingly accurate predictions, according to his followers, was the death of King Henry II of France. Nostradamus wrote, "The young lion will overcome the older one. On the field of combat in a single battle, he will pierce his eyes through a golden cage, 2 wounds made one, then he dies a cruel death." In 1559, Henry was killed during a jousting match when his opponent's lance shattered and a fragment pierced the king's visor, entering his eye and fatally injuring him. The accuracy of the prophecy, including references to a golden cage and 2 wounds made one, has made it one of the most famous examples of Nostradamus's supposed abilities. Another popular interpretation of Nostradamus's quatrains involves U.S. President John F. Kennedy. A verse translated to mean, "The great man will be struck down in the day by a thunderbolt," an evil deed foretold by the bearer of a petition, has been associated with the events of November 1963. Notably, the popularity of Nostradamus seems to increase after major world events, with true believers trying to interpret which quatrain said event may be related to. Remember to like and subscribe, and also click the share button and notification bell, and check out my other content on mysteries, urban legends, demonology, true crime, and more.